Ladies and gentlemen, Broncos players are talking trash about the Raiders and Mark Davis, but this video has since been deleted.
Do you really want my answer?
Plus, the Raiders have made roster moves in light of the Chandler Jones situation. We have a clearer insight on who could possibly be playing this week to replace him. Josh Jacobs is also talking about the matchup. Hunter Renfrow is trying to dispel myths that he's clashing with the coaching staff. Plus, NFL executives around the world are rating the Raiders as one of the worst teams in the AFC. They are huge underdogs this season. Could we be seeing an upset where everybody doubts this team and they defy the odds and make a lot of people a lot of money? Remember to like and subscribe for more Raiders content. So the Chandler Jones situation is unavoidable. You got to talk about it. It's one of the biggest stories around the NFL. Max Crosby was asked about it and I found his reaction quite interesting. Check this out.
Max, obviously something occurred yesterday with Chandler Jones. He's not here today. How do you guys...
I knew Vinny would be the one.
I know.
I know.
And he seems sort of disappointed, saying he knew Vinny, the Las Vegas Review-Journal reporter, would be the first to ask, something he definitely does not want to talk about.
How do you make sure that this doesn't become a distraction?
Everything's in-house, so yeah, we're good.
And it just seems like there's a lot he wants to say. He has to hold back. There's frustration there. He tried to laugh it off about the fact that he was getting asked that question, but it definitely seems tense, and it's really crazy to think about Max Crosby and his relationship with Chandler Jones. Remember just last year, Max Crosby was stoked that Chandler Jones was there. You have this article here talking about it, and he even said that he's always looked up to him for a long time, and it's incredible that he's there. He was super stoked to see the signing happen, and he appeared to be friends with Chandler Jones. This was an ESPN of March of 2022, just last year. Friendship with Max Crosby, big reason why Chandler Jones chose the Las Vegas Raiders. And Chandler Jones said that after he was signed, that Max Crosby FaceTimed him when he found out the news and was about to cry. He was so happy. He was about to cry when I saw him down in the cafeteria earlier. This is Chandler Jones talking about Max Crosby. And so even though I believe these guys are professional guys, I think Max Crosby is an amazing football player. This is a tough emotional situation that the Raiders are going through right now, especially for people like Max Crosby, who were friends with the guy, and now we have learned that maybe they're not so close of friends anymore. Chandler Jones stopped following Max Crosby and the Raiders on Instagram. And it's so weird that August 30th, not that long ago, Chandler Jones posted this picture of him with Tyree Wilson, who now appears to be his replacement. But Josh McDaniels was asked if Tyree Wilson would get the starting job because Chandler Jones is not going to be in this upcoming game against the Denver Broncos. And he did not give a real answer. He pretty much said, oh, we're going to expect everybody to be ready to go. And you have the Athletic here, writer Tashawn Reed, saying something that I think makes the most sense, especially if you've been paying attention to the health of Tyree Wilson, which is the fact that Malcolm Kuntz will most likely get the start, and maybe you'll see a little bit of Tyree Wilson. Prior to that preseason game with the Cowboys, Tyree Wilson had not been practicing really at all. And Tyree Wilson has really only had 10 days of training camp practice coming off that injury he had in college. And the Raiders had 54 players on the roster. Chandler Jones is still on the roster, and they had to make a move to get Josh Jacobs back on the roster. So they placed Brandon Faison on IR, the cornerback who's been dealing with injuries throughout all of camp. He should be out at least 4 games. When you put somebody on IR after the start of the regular season, they're out for at least 4 games. Maybe he can come off IR, but the Raiders are able to be compliant with the 53-man roster rules. One man who ended up becoming compliant, signing the contract, signing the tag with a little bonus on top of it with incentives this year, Josh Jacobs, was asked about Sean Payton. And I found this so interesting because remember, Sean Payton was on the Kay Adams show trying to recruit this guy. And remember, he was hyping up Josh Jacobs a lot. And a lot of us thought, hey, is Sean Payton going to try to go after Josh Jacobs? And now you got Jacobs here, and I want you to see how his face just lights up when asked about Sean Payton.
Out there and just try to play my game.
What is it like knowing that you are going against, a team coached by Sean Payton?
I mean, it's dope. I got the opportunity, spend some time with him in the offseason, just talk to him and see how he thinks and things like that.
Interesting. He talked to Sean Payton, able to see how he thinks. It really does seem like maybe Sean Payton was trying to recruit this guy if the Raiders did rescind the franchise tag or trade him away.
And, I got a lot of respect for him, but it's going to be fun to go against.
What's it like after his...
Yeah, that was the Super Bowl, kind of like that whole week.
So around that same time when he was on the Kay Adams show, that's when he got to know Sean Payton, got to talk to him a little bit. Technically, because Josh Jacobs was on the non-exclusive franchise tag, it's not tampering for him to talk to other coaches and even negotiate with them in this past offseason once the tag was placed. And Hunter Renfrow was asked a very odd question by the Las Vegas Review-Journal about not fighting City Hall and just doing what he's asked to do. It seems like they're trying to get at Hunter Renfrow, not trying to put his own spin on things and just follow instructions from the coaching staff. And Hunter Renfrow had an interesting response here.
Ever get to a point where you figure out I can't fight City Hall? I just got to kind of do what I'm being asked to do, or is there an appreciation where
And Hunter Renfrow is kind of being put in a weird spot with this question. He right away says, hey, I wouldn't go that far, because he doesn't want to appear like he's a guy who's not listening to the coaching staff.
okay, I see what the vision is here.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that, I want to paint that narrative that, we were tension, we were fighting, It just takes time to learn offense, and, it doesn't matter if it's Gruden's offense or McDaniel's, it just takes time. And so hopefully, I felt a lot more familiar coming in this year.
So basically, he's trying to say, hey, there's no tension between me and the coaching staff. It just takes time to learn an offense. But it seems like the question originally was trying to imply maybe he's trying to put his own spin on things, and now he's not fighting City Hall, just doing what he's told to do. And these men here gave some fighting words about the Raiders. This is a crazy, heated rivalry matchup that we have this Sunday. And this was originally posted by DNVR Broncos podcast, and they have since taken this down. People have obviously clipped it up, recorded it. Once you post something on the internet, it's there forever. We have Greg Dulcich, the tight end, saying that the Broncos are just a better team than the Raiders.
Yeah, because we're a better team, and we're going to prove that. And I like the way that we do things a lot better.
So already getting real cocky when talking about the Raiders. And then Randy Gregory went after freaking Mark Davis and his haircut. This is insane.
Do you really want my answer? I don't like the owner's haircut. Yeah, I don't like the bowl cut. Kind of pisses me off.
Okay, it's one thing to not like Mark Davis's hairstyle. I get you there. But for it to piss you off, if anything, he just looks like a funny old guy. But it's good to see that this rivalry is heating up, even though there's been some coaching changes, player changes over the past few years. Still a Broncos-Raiders AFC West rivalry at the end of the day. And this is huge, man. I wanted to point this out because everybody right now, and myself included, are not high on the Raiders. People are not expecting this team to do well. And this is people around the NFL executives were ranking AFC teams. And these are people who could be GMs, who could be, pro personnel, analytics, and strategy, assistant GM. These are people who have chosen to speak anonymously, and they ranked every single AFC team. And Raiders, of course, were not ranked that high. Actually, 14th when you put it all together, 14th out of the 16 teams in the AFC. Only the Colts and Texans are rated worse than the Raiders. A couple of people, one person in particular, rated the Raiders last at 16, and the highest the Raiders were rated were at 13. So they'd be in the Titans category here. But the Broncos and Raiders, both at the bottom in terms of the AFC, and these are people around the NFL who currently work for teams around the league. And I've been sort of tripped out how people are just so publicly down on the Raiders, and sort of the conspiracy theorist in me actually thinks the Raiders are going to shock everyone and do well. I just feel like when everybody's talking about how they're going to suck, people in the national media, you got other GMs and people who work around the league saying the Raiders are going to do poorly, it just trips me out. We're like, all right, are they trying to tank the market for the Raiders, make them an underdog, and then make a lot of cash because they know something we all don't? The Super Bowl's in Vegas. I started thinking about that stuff. Plus, last year, the Raiders were favored in every single game, especially at the beginning of the year. We were talking about the Raiders taking the division. This is all over national media. And then the Raiders ended up tanking and having a horrible season. And now it's the opposite. Everybody's saying that they're close to the worst team in the AFC, maybe at least the third worst. And everyone's saying they're going to have a bad year this year. And they're not favored in several games. They are actually the underdog in this upcoming game against the Denver Broncos. But here's what people had to say. These are actually people who work around the league like we mentioned, this one exec said Tennessee has Vrabel, Denver has Peyton, New England has Belichick. What do the Raiders have? So this exec straight up taking a shot at the head coach, Josh McDaniels, pretty much saying, hey, all these other teams who we think are going to do bad in the AFC, at least they have a good head coach. And so there's an attack on McDaniels there from one of these executives. And then also one executive joked, and this is the person who voted the Raiders last, voted them 16. This person joked and wondered where Chandler Jones would place the Raiders in terms of rankings in the AFC. That is cold-blooded, dude. But hey, like we mentioned earlier, this Chandler Jones thing is one of the craziest things around the league, and people are taking note around the NFL. And this is from The Athletic, and here's one take that I thought was very sensible, and I think this is what everybody is worried about here when it comes to Josh McDaniels, is everyone hoped that Josh McDaniels learned from the experience in Denver. But to me, he's doing the same thing he did in Denver. He got rid of Jay Cutler there, got rid of Derek Carr here. The coaches who leave New England do not command the same team loyalty as Bill Belichick gets. I think the Raiders players will mail it in early. Wow, this is what an exec said. Raiders players will mail it in early. And it's undeniable that we're seeing the patterns of Josh McDaniels making some of the same mistakes he did in Denver. But we've seen Matt Patricia, Bill O'Brien, tons of people who become head coaches elsewhere come crawling back to New England. And it just seems like a lot of people would not be surprised if Josh McDaniels ends up doing the same thing. But I just get tripped out. I just get tripped out when I see everybody unanimously saying the Raiders are going to be bad this year. Look, I don't believe in Josh McDaniels either. I don't like the guy, but I still do think he could have won more games last year. He just wanted to move on from Derek Carr. You definitely got to have a losing season to move on from the franchise quarterback. And at the end of the day, the Raiders still have Devontae Adams, still have Josh Jacobs, still have star players on this team. And on the defensive side of the football, Chandler Jones wasn't a factor last year anyway. So is that really going to have a big impact in this upcoming game against the Denver Broncos? And look, the Denver Broncos are 3.5-point favorites. That means that people believe the Broncos are going to win by more than a field goal. And I just feel like, look, man, I don't know how well the Raiders are going to do this year. I'm skeptical of the whole Josh McDaniels thing, but I find it weird that the Raiders are such underdogs coming into this game when it's still the second year with their coach. The Broncos have a brand new coach, tons of injuries at the wide receiver position. I believe the Raiders will win this game against the Denver Broncos. I think they have the talent to do it. They should be good. They should have more chemistry this year because apparently they got more of their guys, right? So I expect the Raiders to get a victory here against the Denver Broncos. And everyone being against the Raiders is just sort of making me think, man, are they just going to shock everybody this year? Super Bowls in Vegas. Brady's a minority owner now. The league never lets Brady lose. But at the same time, if they lose this first game against the Denver Broncos, I think we really are in store for a complete dumpster fire. And maybe all these executives are right. Maybe they're just trying to be honest with us right here. Maybe they're not trying to do some insider trading and mess with the betting market. And it could totally be the case that Josh McDaniels has really mismanaged this whole situation. We don't have a healthy QB. We don't have the right roster. And perhaps Josh McDaniels is in over his head on this head coaching thing. Either way, the Broncos are talking trash. They even took shots at Mark Davis. Hopefully this ends with the Raiders getting a victory. Josh McDaniels beating his former team that he coached just not too long ago. Let me know your predictions for this game in the comments below. My name is WiFiWillie. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.